So while a lot of conservative states have carve-outs saying we're not going to punish women for abortion, they don't have carve-outs for a range of other behavior. So people in the name of fetal personhood face criminal punishment for substance use during pregnancy, for when they miscarry at home, not treating fetal remains with whatever the state thinks is the appropriate method or showing of respect, um, having a glass of wine and falling down the stairs. So that's all selective prosecution too. People are not, wealthy women are not being prosecuted for things like that for taking Tylenol during pregnancy against doctor's orders, right? So I think if you're trying to imagine what this dystopian prosecution world would look like, it would look like that, right? It would look like people being opportunistic and laws being unfairly applied.
So much of the argument that seems to come across for fetal personhood is a zero-sum argument when it comes to women. Women tend to get lost or diminished in this process. They're either, as you say, the victims of unscrupulous doctors, or they're morally loose women, or they're like human aquariums, and that's their own value. Um, and and um, and I'm wondering what the legal implications, if you tease this out down the road, we're getting into handmaid territory where authorities might go looking through your trash for pregnancy tests. And we've already seen discussions of authorities monitoring menstrual cycle apps and looking for behavior, maybe after the fact, after there's a court case of young women who seek abortions, or who are looking for some other means of dealing with what they regard as a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things, so there's obviously the sort of dystopian handmaid scenario where the state really monitors everyone who's pregnant. It seems unlikely that we would see that, in part because some of the lawmakers who pass these laws have family members they want to be able to access abortion, and in part because it's just prohibitively expensive. So the history instead of how these laws are enforced is equally dystopian, but it's really a story of selective enforcement. So we've started to see this in some of the lawsuits that have been filed, wrongful death and other lawsuits, by folks who are angry that their partners or exes or others are having abortions. And often what you see is that these laws about personhood are leveraged for advancing really personal agendas, right? Whether that's people who are unhappy in relationships and want to exit them, or people who are trying to exert control in relationships where they're losing it, or people who are, I mean, in the past, it's been people who are angry that their partners are having affairs with other people. So these laws, I think, sometimes also end up being kind of invitations to things like blackmail and bounty hunting, in part because the political will to actually enforce a personhood style law on its face is just so lacking that you instead see prosecutors behaving opportunistically. That's also evident, I think, in the way we're already seeing more prosecutions for pregnancy-related conduct. So while a lot of conservative states have carve-outs saying we're not going to punish women for abortion, they don't have carve-outs for a range of other behavior. So people in the name of fetal personhood face criminal punishment for substance use during pregnancy, for when they miscarry at home, not treating fetal remains with whatever the state thinks is the appropriate method or showing of respect. People who are burying fetal remains and being prosecuted for things like desecrating a corpse, people who are being prosecuted for things that sound like murder or neglect because of decisions they make during pregnancy, like getting in a physical altercation, or having a glass of wine and falling down the stairs. So that's all selective prosecution too. People are not, wealthy women are not being prosecuted for things like that for taking Tylenol during pregnancy against doctor's orders, right? So I think if you're trying to imagine what this dystopian prosecution world would look like, it would look like that, right? It would look like people being opportunistic and laws being unfairly applied.
Hi, I'm Pat Morrison, one of the hosts of America at a Crossroads. If you like this video, don't just watch. Head over to our website where you can subscribe for early access to new programs, see our upcoming schedules, and connect directly with our guests in our weekly live streams. Thank you for watching.
And you do see the law applied very oddly. For example, you may have a manslaughter or murder charge if a woman is murdered and her the 8-month-old viable fetus dies as well. Whereas you're not going to have that happen for a woman who's a month pregnant or 2 months pregnant. And we've had cases in California and in Texas as well, I think, where pregnant women have argued that they should be able to use the carpool lanes
Yep.
because they are pregnant with a person, and the judges have essentially laughed them out of the courtroom. So there are so many pitfalls and traps awaiting any legislation like this.
There are, and I think again, one of the things that's clear in the pattern is that often you will see states saying, just because we're saying a fetus is a person doesn't mean that pregnant women get to benefit from that, right? So just because, you know, we can put a doctor in jail for mailing you the pills doesn't mean you get to drive in the HOV lane. The other thing you uncover is that these sort of not constitutional ideas of personhood, but just other ideas of personhood in are lots of laws, even in blue states, and they're kind of contradictory. So when a fetus is a person in one context is not when a fetus is a person in another context. And so trying to make all of that make sense will also be kind of a disaster, I think, if we go.
Including your tax deduction on your taxes if you're 2 months pregnant.
Right.
So although that, who knows, that would be the extreme from, I would think, from point of view of an absolutist in the fetal parenthood movement. See on the screen our upcoming programs and a variety of topics and timely ones as well. We hope you will join us for those topics as well and support in any way you can what it is that we do here, the mission of JUDJ's programs. Thank you very much. I'm Pat Morrison. Appreciate you watching and listening this evening.